Electrocast.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
What I really like about what you do and what game designers do is it's like telling a story, which is such a fundamental human art thing, but different tools do it differently, right? Even the way animation works versus live action. It's the first place I would encourage people to go. If they want to learn, if they want to do interesting, cool animation, video games is, it's a huge industry and you can totally make your living as an animator in video games,
Hello, welcome to Brain Arcade. What's up, Joe? Thanks for coming on. Everybody, this is Joe Ksander. Joe, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on. Big fan of your show. Big fan of you. My name is Joe Ksander. I am an animator, filmmaker, video game player, and I worked in video games for a chunk of time, and I love them and love talking about video games with Crisscross, and have done for nigh on 20 years now. 25 years.
Longer, actually.
Oh, shit. Yeah. God damn it. Yeah.
We've been talking video games for probably almost 34 years.
Yeah, since the late
1992,
1900s.
right?
Yeah, 92.
Yeah, since the 1900s, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give a little bit of background. So Joe lived in the dorms 2 doors down from me. Was it 2?
Yeah.
2 doors down. And we met in 4 North Reber at UCLA, and I don't remember how exactly we met, except that we were all playing video games, I think, in Lynn's room, right?
Well, Lynn had that 386. And he upgraded, right? Because he had like a machine that couldn't play Wing Commander at speed. He didn't have the clock speed to play Wing Commander. Yeah,
that's right.
We all, I think he ended up upgrading, and so we could all play video games in his room. Not to mention the great Street Fighter arcade machine
downstairs.
That's what bonded us. That's right. Like Street Fighter in the dorms.
Yeah. So Joe and I went on to work together at DreamWorks for a while. Which project was that? Rising Sun?
Rising Sun, yeah, Medal of Honor Rising Sun, which is like right out of. I went to UCLA for grad school as well. I went to the film school there, and as I was graduating or was finishing up grad school at UCLA, I got a chance to work with you guys at I think it was called EA at the time. By the time I joined,
we were owned by EA. Yes, we had become EA Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's right. But it was in that same office up there in Bel Air, and. I got to work on it was Rising Sun, which was like the Pacific Theater Medal of Honor game, which was a great boot camp for me for animation. Because one of the things you got to do in video games, especially back then, was that there was just so much footage in the amount of time that like you just animated something new all the time. Like you have to do a walk cycle, you got to do a run cycle. Maybe it's not good. It doesn't matter. You got to finish it and you got to move on. So it was like boot camp. It was like animation boot camp for me. Yeah. And you just got to move through. I did get frustrated with that. That like the pace wasn't like make it good. The pace was like just get it done, and which is why I chafed at it a little bit. But partially it was also just the nature of the way productions were made. I was famously EA at the time was a challenging workplace in that era.
Were you there when the EA spouse email was sent?
Yep.
That letter?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that happened around that time. So like Crunch was accepted in a different way, and we were all just.
Do you want to tell them what EA spouse was? Is that a piece of?
I mentioned it before.
Share?
So EA spouse was basically somebody's spouse wrote a sternly worded letter about the inhumanity of the fact that she never saw her spouse because of the work practice, etc. And I think it turned into a lawsuit.
It was like constant crunch, right? It was like always
constant crunch. I mean, I think in those years, even before that, like when I was in QA, like those are the longest weeks I've ever had. I think I was averaging 100 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
Like
And I mean,
easily.
and partially like there was a certain amount of like, oh, we're into it. Like we get to play video games and what
Sure.
else are we going to do? Right.
Free soda and all my friends are here, right? So
That's right. Yeah. Although the one time that we all got the Hunter virus
oh, I forgot about
at that
that.
office. Yeah.
Yeah, what a cesspool. Like when you work
just
with people,
hepatitis, just floating around.
just hepatitis A on everything. So, you know, needless to say, so you and I have known each other for a long time, and we had been talking about video games even before. So when I talk about my origin story, you were one of the 5 people that said you need to just stop talking about whatever you're talking about now because I don't get it. And go make games.
Yeah.
It was like you, Kenji. There was a couple other people, but like you were one of the ones that was like, you know what? You're really starting to speak the talk the talk. You really should just go do this, right? And then I think you were around for me making that really crappy resume.
Yeah, that's right. You made a resume, but you also you got a job QAing for Blizzard, right? And
yeah, that was my first.
We would go down to Irvine on the weekend and play like Quake LAN parties.
Oh, I forgot we did that.
Offices.
That's right.
Yeah,
we made a 58-mile drive just to play Quake.
Yeah. Talk about network issues.
I think we only did that a couple times, right?
Like your view of video games. Like I don't make video games for a living. I do animation, but the thoughtfulness that you had, like, and the rigor, and honestly, it's like it was all you. It was like, you know, you didn't go to school for that. That was just how you saw the world, and there was something really inspiring about that. So when I started doing animation, it was inspired by that because you were doing 3D work as well. Like the idea of doing it for video games, there's something, oh, this is what focus looks like. This is what attention looks like. And you know what, if you're going to get good at this stuff, it's going to take work. Right. And, you know, I kind of went on my own journey and left, you know, I left EA. I learned, like I said, I learned an incredible amount from animating at EALA. But there was definitely like this feeling that like, oh, I can do better than this. I can do more of this. Because at the time, especially, the technology did not allow for like really sophisticated animation. Things have definitely changed.
Yes.
And like, I was working there with Bobby Connington, right? Who's over at Insomniac now running the Spider-Man stuff. And like, he and I had this conversation a lot about like, you know, what we're trying to do. I think he said to me once, like, I know I will have succeeded if I can get somebody to cry at a piece of animation that I've done. And of course, when I was playing the Spider-Man game and, you know, the spoiler, what happens to Aunt May in that game, I cried and I called him. I let him know that he did it. Yeah. You know, all those years later. But I was a little more impatient. Like I didn't have the patience to wait for like technology and work production to like become what I wanted to do in animation. So I left to go work in movies. I went to go work at a studio called Rhythm and Hues, which isn't around anymore. But I was there for quite a while. They're like an animation visual effects studio. And I really, of course, I grew up, I became an animator not because of Disney films. Like I didn't watch Disney films growing up. I watched Akira and, you know, the walkers from Empire Strikes Back, right? That's why I wanted to animate. So I went and did visual effects animation for many years. Kind of made my bones. I was a junior animator on the first Narnia movie, The Chronicles of Narnia. And I was freshly out of the intern pool. I was a junior animator, but it was like summer break, and Rhythm and Hues had a really liberal vacation policy, but I hadn't earned it yet since I was the new kid. And they had a new animation supervisor, Richie Bainham, who had just come off of the Lord of the Rings movies, doing Gollum and those kinds of things, to direct the animation on this new franchise. And he's like, "Well, you're around. Can you do a bunch of like animal walk cycles for us to test out?" So I started doing lion walk cycles, and I'd never really done that before, like in school or whatever. So I kind of just figured out how quadrupeds worked, and we ended up doing like a test to like prove out that we could do a photorealistic lion in a movie like that. And everybody was I'm going to pat myself on the back, but everybody was so impressed with the animation, and it wasn't just me, it was the rendering team and the way they did fur and muscles and all that.
You got
that,
stuck.
like, they were like, holy shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so they made me a lead animator there.
That's amazing. From intern to lead animator.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, a bunch of the senior animators came back from vacation and were like, who the fuck is this guy?
What is he? Wasn't this guy an intern when I left?
Yeah, that's right. But it was great because, you know, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know how to do, and you just got to learn on the fly. And I think, again, that was something that watching you because at that point you were doing a bunch of stuff. You're still at EA, like spearheading like the new their new like they were doing all this stuff, like all that. I don't know what you can talk about, what you can't, but like there were like a bunch of new projects, big IP that they were trying to develop with big creators. There's the Spielberg partnerships and stuff that you guys were working on at the time.
You might remember better than me. I mean, we were trying to do some Central Tech stuff. There was the GoldenEye project. There was also like
the LMNOP thing and
LMNOP. Yeah. I don't even remember what. I remember it vaguely, but like, yeah, I was trying to basically get out of World War II at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Because like I've said this before, I don't consider myself a shooter designer, and in fact, a lot of the things that made Medal of Honor so good in the first 3 or 4 iterations was that it actually didn't follow most of the conventions.
Right. It was a narrative. It was a narrative tool.
But mechanically, like it was built a certain way, which is why they play very awkwardly now. Because we have a grammar that has become accepted that didn't exist then, right? And so
right.
it was
you're kind of like the silent film days, right? Like figuring out how to tell a story in this medium with these tools, and nobody had ever really done it before, right? There was some precedent, but it wasn't like stop and do a cut scene. It was like tell the story in the mechanics by what you see and by what you do and the pacing of it.
Yeah, right. And it was like everything was like, I don't want to use the word diegetic because the way it's used now is different, but it had to be in world, right?
Yeah.
And it was like we had scripted things, but not like the way people think of scripted cutscenes now, right? It's like we had things that happened on triggers that were meant to happen in a sequence, and I would always build
very
in
Half-Life-ian, right?
Yeah, like Half-Life 1 was a huge inspiration for me at that time because like a lot of people don't think of this that way, but like the tram ride into the game was probably the most brain changing for me because they essentially built a super boring movie intro, but you were in it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so, but they were foreshadowing. So if you were paying attention, you're actually walking backwards through the game on that tram. You see the end of it, and then you like all of the landmarking is there. It's almost like you took Disneyland and stretched it out, and like you planned your day backwards, right? And then,
well, there's a film conceit that Seven Samurai famously does this. Before the bandits raid the village, there's this sort of like moment where the team sits down and kind of shows what the plan is going to be,
right?
So that later on, when everything goes to hell, why it's not working.
And
of course, Star Wars does it too, right? We're going to fly your fighters into the trench, and there's the computer graphics to show
here's
how that
where
happens.
The plan breaks. It's like good heist movie stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so that you understand it, and there we go. And that Half-Life intro does that without you even knowing what it is. I think I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
So, and anyway, this conversation that you and I have been having about game design forever. I mean, I'm not a game designer, and it's what I really like about what you do and what game designers do is it's like telling a story, which is such a fundamental human art thing, but different tools do it differently, right? The way like, animation works versus live action, there's different tools that work. Edits work differently, music works differently. And in video games, it has its own set of tools, but it's a much newer, like you said, new grammar, right? So like still trying to figure out the best use of that. And, and there's ways of doing it that are very like filmic, Hideo Kojima's, 80-minute cutscenes, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But then there's stuff that's very...
Insert disc 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It looks like you're trying to fight the boss. Then there's the in world, like just the mechanics telling. Yes. There's also a version of like, whatever environmental storytelling, like the Last of Us, where you pick up journals and stuff like that. But to me, that always that's cool, and I love that game. That always felt like that's like ancillary. It's like bonus content because the actual activity of the game doesn't tell you most of that story.
And it's interesting what like part of what kicked off this journey to do Brain Arcade and stuff was like I started realizing that a lot of what I do is actually like I won't say subconscious, but it's happening at a subliminal level, right? So like it's not important that you file away, and I'll use Fallout 4 because I love some of their environmental storytelling, right? Whereas like you have a moment where there's like a big skeleton and a small skeleton in a bathtub, and there's a note, right? And like you have this moment, but it's like I don't really attach to those characters. I can feel the humanity of it, but it fills in the world of like the apocalypse happened and this is a slice of that. And so it is set dressing, but it is a nice it fills out the world, right? And so
Yeah,
like
for sure. And like if that wasn't there, I think you would you would miss it. You would notice that like it doesn't feel
right,
authentic or doesn't feel right, but you wouldn't be able to
right,
point to it and say why.
right. It's that feeling part, right? So
Oh yeah, feeling
yeah,
exactly. Not to crap on Last of Us because I'm a huge fan of that game too. But there is a thing that they did mechanically really well too, which was narrative, and that was a thing that really stuck with me. And I think I'm not the first person to point this out, but there's like, there's one mechanic you do in the game all the time, which is that you get to an arena and you got to get up to a higher level and you
okay,
can't get there on
yeah,
your own. So you got to send Ellie around and she finds something and
yeah,
she
right,
knocks
right, right,
knocks a thing over you or knocks a ladder down and you got to put it up. And it's a mechanic that it's something to do and it feels like
sure,
fun. It has its own interactivity value to it, but you do it so much throughout the game. But then there's like this big traumatic climax in that story where sort of the relationship changes
uh-huh.
and
And she stops knocking ladders down for you.
yeah, then you go into this moment and it's the same thing. You go back into that same kind of arena. It's a
Yeah,
mall or whatever, and you do the thing and she doesn't get the ladder for you. And because you've been doing it for like 12
yeah,
hours,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it feels really distinct. Like, and that's using the mechanics to tell a story. Like you said, it's subliminal,
Right.
it's emotional, and you just feel it in the wax. So it's like a really organic video
It,
game of like an edit or something.
and it's character consistent, right? And so here's something interesting. So you and I actually ended up talking a lot about story, and I think you helped me a lot in how to translate game design to story, because
Mm.
the way that we talked is you always represented like a story narrative side, and you and I would argue about stuff or debate, right? And it was basically like, okay, how
Friendly
do I
arguments, yeah.
well, it was like basically, okay, how do I do this in the Joe way, right? And so it was
Mm.
it was very formative for me to sit in Maloney's over a beer and talk about how do we make a game about a space vampire, right?
Mhm.
Like how does this work, and sort of going over that story. And so like for me, it was very helpful to like break out of just the world that game designers can sit in all by themselves for long periods of time. But the mechanical thing is super important, because like here's the thing that I don't know that I got from you, but I'm pretty sure that you influenced this. Is like I have this like bag of tricks, right? Like, and I only bring them out when I'm like, oh, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Here, let's try and solve it this way. Well, one of them is back to when we were doing beat charts for games and stuff. And so like it's interesting. The one detail that I bring to it is that's slightly different than the just your regular movie beat chart, is I put the player on there, because I want to track the journey that the player is having from the moment that they start to where they end. And am I taking them somewhere, or are they just in a minecart? Right. So it's like, if we don't consider that, you end up not allowing things like, I think that situation with the ladder happens and it's great for the story, but the feeling that you got can absolutely be planned and tracked, right?
Of course, 100%. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that part of the journey for you is actually more than just the two character interactions. It's also a feeling of loss or loneliness,
hmm
right? And so that on a personal level is like, oh, but not only that, I lost a power. I can no longer do these like ladder things, which means I need to think about the game world differently. But
yeah.
also like that like emotional feeling of loss of a dependence. The reason was a character reason, not because like, I dropped the fucking gun of ladder knocking into a
Right.
hole,
Yeah,
right? Like it
yeah.
was like
Oh, that gun. Yeah.
right.
Well, I mean, I think that's actually a great like counterpoint because I got that from you like as like a storyteller or whatever, that like the audience, the effect you want to have on the audience is the thing you're tracking. I have a
right.
different kind of an audience in linear
Yep.
storytelling
Sure.
because there's less agency and it's a passive. I definitely like controlling what the viewer sees.
Yes.
And in fact, the freedom of video games is daunting for me. Like, I don't have a fluency in that. Like, but the thing that I got from you early on was that like the experience of the audience is the whole point.
Right.
Like, what feeling do you want them to have? Now it's like, well, what tools do I have to create a feeling? And some
Right.
feelings are easier to create. It's why laughter is so powerful. It's why it's nice to get like tears, but it can be hard. Much harder to get tears than one thinks it is. Yeah.
Yes. But I think that, so maybe what we're arriving on is like you and I worked on that together, because like Well, it's interesting because I talk about like game loops and different things, and there's a lot of repetition in games. You only have so many tools to use for this communication, and but it's holistic. It includes the whole game product, right? Not just what the mechanics are. And so that's why, like, I try to focus in. Like, I don't say it as succinctly as you just said it, but basically, I'm always trying to represent putting the player and their arc not just in the moment, but what are we doing for them across, a whole experience, right?
Yeah, and that's the structural
Yeah,
part of storytelling that I
yeah,
think is really powerful. But it's also, it can feel mathy, it can feel cold, but in the end, you're trying to generate emotion. After I was at Rhythm and Hughes, I left to go work on. I worked on a movie called Nine, which was
yeah.
an animated feature directed by a friend of mine, Shane Acker, and on that learned, like I started writing. Actually, like doing like actual screenwriting to like try to get words up on screen,
Yeah.
and realizing that like there is it can be not, it's not just a matter of like transcribing human words. It's again, what's the effect you want to have? But if it feels like it's coming out of a person in a fake way or a character in a fake way,
Uh-huh.
the audience disengages really quickly. And that, and especially when you're dealing with animation, which is often an abstraction of reality, like, it's a little,
Right.
in that case, tiny little dolls made of burlap. So you're already distant from them. They might be
Yes.
appealing, but they're not real. They are caricatures often. So there's some things that they do more intensely than a real human does, but there's other things you can't do. Like those characters famously had no eyes, right? You couldn't
Right.
really do eye expression. They were open and closed. And so how do you communicate emotion if you don't have, eyebrow shapes and stuff like that? It was a big question
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
And so much so, in fact, that the studio that was kept asking us, can we redesign them with more
Mhm.
flexible eyes? But
Uh-huh.
we had a producer, Tim Burton, was the EP on that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he did is he was like Jupiter. He would like be the gravity that attracted all the notes. So
Sure.
like they'd have to go through Tim Burton, and he'd be like, "No, I made Nightmare Before Christmas without eyeballs. But they can
Yeah.
do this without eyeballs, right?
Yeah. Have
It
fun.
works, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
different set of tools that you
Well,
have to use. So
that's super
yeah.
interesting because sometimes it's just what he actually gave them was not just authority but confidence. Like, no, it can be done. I got this. You can figure it out. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, we felt like we knew how to do it, but we were still figuring it
yeah,
out. It
yeah.
was the studio being like not sure if it was going to play. Like, they
Sure.
were working with animation kind of at the first time, so it was
Yeah.
like our bosses making them confident, or at least getting them to back off long enough for us to be able to do that.
Right.
Um, after I did Nine, and worked at Rhythm Hughes for a little bit more, I went to ILM, right up in
Right.
San Francisco,
Right.
which of course was a dream because that's one of the reasons why I got into animation. So I got to work there for a number of years, and and I really and I loved it. It was it was a dream job. One of the things I discovered is that like I was working on big projects, doing like Transformers movies and Guillermo del Toro movies and stuff like that. And
Right.
it was a lot of fun, but at one point they asked me to supervise on a show because like at Rhythm and Hughes, I'd kind of like reached the top. I was like animation director. I was like, and like felt like I was like kind of at the top, of sort of limit of what I was able to do, and feeling a little bit frustrated, feeling like kind of like I did when I was a kid.
Trapped.
I
Yeah.
want to do more. I
Yep.
want to a little bit like, yeah, I was like, trapped in a box. But then I went to ILM and like I'm solidly like in the middle of the pack. There's so many people
Right.
so good. It's like, oh shit, okay, this is a bench I can learn from.
Right.
And I did. I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, worked with them for a long time, and then, but then got to the point where they're like, okay, we like what you're doing. You want to come supervise on this one show? And I realized that if I said yes, I'm going to be there for the rest of my career. I'm never going to go anywhere else. I mean, if I'm
Right.
lucky, who knows,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. Sure.
But like
Sure.
versus like what I really want to do is make movies and tell stories. Like as much as I love animating on these things, I'm not going to do that. I'm always going to be working on Michael Bay movies or somebody
Right.
else's movies or a Star Wars movie or something like that, which would be
Yes.
amazing. And it's hard to complain about that. So I left ILM and took a year off from working and just took improv classes,
Yep.
took writing classes, and just learned how to like write. Taught myself
Uh-huh.
to write, taught myself to perform, and it was great. It was a great period. But I'd given myself like a year to do that because I had
Uh-huh.
enough like severance pay from my previous
Yeah.
gig
Sure.
that I could live off of that. Right at the end of that year, and I was working with a friend of mine, Kevin Adams, who I met on Nine actually, and we were working on a kind of a short film, like kind of idea for like a science fiction short, like a visual
Uh-huh.
effects, live
Yeah. Yeah.
action
Sure.
visual
Sure.
effects short film to sort of prove what we could do. And right at the end of that like year, when I was just about like at the end of my rope there, I was like, okay, I got to started getting a real job. But then we got this opportunity. We got some money to make that
Right.
short, which was great. Like, it wasn't money to live off; it was money to make the short. But I was
Sure.
like, oh shit, now I got to make this thing,
Right.
and which was great. But I really needed a job at that point. So we made this thing, and it took like 3 months to like get it all done. And we're like, shot it ourselves, did all the visual effects ourselves. It just, and
Yeah.
so it got us, and it got us attention and meetings and stuff like that. But you're not getting
paid
lunch
for
paid
meetings.
for.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started working at again, Richie Bainham, who I'd met at Rhythm and Hues, who had since moved on to the Avatar movies and was the animation director on the Avatar movies. And they were doing a Avatar installation in Disney World. And so he wanted me to come in and help them animate that. So it was great. So I went to Disney Imagineering and worked with the Imagineering team for a couple years, which was great. And the great thing about working at Imagineering was that I didn't know anything, right? As I was coming up as like a journeyman animator, I would often do that thing, which is not something I recommend, but like people would say, hey, do you know this thing, Joe? Here's this piece of advice or this piece of technique or whatever. And I'd always be like, yeah, of course I do. I didn't. I'd have to go back and figure it out because I wanted to prove that I like had earned it, and I didn't want people to think I didn't know. So while I was coming up, I realized I missed opportunities to learn new things because I was so trying to convince everybody else that I knew what I was doing that I was missing things that I could have learned.
You were missing opportunities for learning. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Which is the thing I was thinking about, like working with you, is that there was always something I learned from you. Like that was always one of those, this is not a show about you, but like there's this like way you thought about the world that I didn't think about it, but like totally made sense. And I was able to like apply what you were doing to what I was doing. And I sort of like,
for a while, makes me warm inside, Joe, because I never really thought about
it's
it.
work. And I still think about, there are key phrases that stick around in my head. I'll drop a few of them in a minute, but at Imagineering, I had gone back to that. Like, I don't know. Cause like, I didn't know anything about video games when I was working with you. I didn't know anything about robots when I was working at Imagineering. So and when you say, I don't know, you tell me, people are happy to talk about what they're doing.
Right.
And especially if they're excited. And I learned so much just by being open to it and not trying to prove that I knew what was going on.
Yeah, it took me a while to get there too, but it was pretty early for me to start going like, and I this is not to be diminishing, but like I'm a hacker. Right. But I mean, like my DNA is game designer, but also hacker. Like the only thing that makes that work is the fact that it's towards I'm always trying to serve the audience. Right. If I was a game designer and a hacker and I was trying to serve me, we would have I would have made the most inane shit. Right. But like basically because I have like, there's a service angle to it of like, who is this for? Then I'm happy to not do, by the way, I do things the right way, but I'm always evaluating on, is the right way actually the right way?
Right, exactly. Or you're not trying to simulate a world. You're trying to entertain an audience.
Yeah. Speaking of Disneyland, I used to say like send all the designers to Disneyland and go ride Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Because like a fire is cellophane, an orange light, and like a mist machine to make it smoky and a sound effect, right? There's no cannonball. There's a poof of smoke, there's a splash of water, and there's a poof of air above your head to make it feel like something passed. But there's no actual cannonball. It's not a simulation. It's an experience. And so like I applied that to games, right? And it's that idea of like, I mean, like I said, I don't want to be like diminishing when I say hacker. It's essentially like creative solutions to get to the right to the right feel. Right. It was always what I was
it's not about writing a SIGGRAPH paper.
Yes.
It's about getting an emotional response out of an audience member. And you have to invent interesting technology along the way to do that for sure. Yeah. But the ultimate result is like how the people feel when they're watching it.
Yeah. And also the like early realization that like, because of Moore's law and the advancing of technology at a rapid clip, you could never actually know everything. Not only that, you can never say I'm an expert at this tool and rest on your haunches. You have to commit to constantly learning new stuff. And I think like some of my boredom comes with like, doing larger games for companies and stuff like that comes from like, oh, I've solved all these problems.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not the problem solving is kind of why you got into it.
Yeah, which flavor of problem are you having right now? And like, it's not like the saving grace now is I can be a smoke jumper, like jump into a team and go like, okay, show me all the problems, show me all your tools. All right, well, this is the way you arrange all of that to get it to work, to get the right feel. And so like, I'm never prescriptive with like, this is how we did it at XYZ. You got to do it that way. It's always like, no, we like the player is the king here. So how do we get what you're doing to start to align with that experience, right?
And and then it's a new IP, it's a new game, it's a new whatever.
It's
and
variables.
It's going to have its own new problems. And there are, I'm sure there's skills and intuitions you developed from the previous ones, but it's a new problem to solve. If it's
sure. Well, but it's interesting though that like later, like now I'm in my career where almost everything is more about. Well, it's always been more about the people working on it.
Of course, yeah.
Always, because like the capability of the team and your effectiveness to communicate, but even more so now that I'm older and everybody under 40 looks like they're 12 and, you know, and probably somebody I used to know or a cousin of somebody, like I've kind of seen lots of personalities and how they work and how they apply themselves to things. So now it's more like I spend more time solving people problems and communication bits
team together,
and getting the right chemistry because like, well, you know, after Mo, I spent a lot of time chasing lightning in a bottle, trying to recreate that lightning until I realized that that was impossible just because I'll never have, even if I got the exact same people together, because we're older, it's going to be different lightning, right? Like it's like you have to sort of adapt to that stuff. So by the way, Joe, sorry, I don't know if this is like a thing for you, but this is interesting. From my POV, like I'm going to go back to our origin story a little bit, right? From my POV, you also taught me about perseverance. And like, so I think we had like a co-lesson here because one of the things that I was super impressed by was like, you had a very strong need to become a storyteller, right? Like it had to happen by any means necessary. And what's interesting is you're not an artist. Like you can, well, maybe now, but you weren't. Right.
Right. I wasn't. No, I had to teach myself. Yeah.
You were not an artist. Joe didn't start with flip books in preschool or like, you know what I mean? Like you didn't start by like drawing all of your stories and having an expression. And what's interesting in hindsight is like you had this storyteller's desire, but you didn't have the right tools yet. Right. And I think, by the way, I use you as an example when I'm talking to younger designers of like, hey, eat your vegetables. Right. Like, you know, my friend Joe couldn't draw stick figures and now he's, you know, animating lions, right? Like it was like, it was basically like he persevered and applied himself to a technology. And I think it was interesting. I think you had a little bit of analysis paralysis to whatever point it was that you're like 3D. You're like, I'm going this direction for me to get good at this. And then you went to art school because you realized that doing 3D wasn't enough. And then you started on this like discovery journey. And it was awesome for me to watch because I got to see this whole growth, right? From like, what? You want to do what? Right? Like, all right.
We do cartoons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, turned into like, oh, Joe's had a whole career here.
Well, there's even this like even after I started animating, there was this process because like I always wanted to make movies and tell stories, but it's like, oh, but I understand what animation is, right? Because I did do flip books and stuff, but I wasn't like a 2D artist. I wasn't like a Disney style animator. But I saw like that early Pixar stuff and the Jurassic Park dinosaurs. I remember watching Jurassic Park and being like, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and saw Jurassic Park and was like, oh, maybe I want to be a paleontologist. And I was like, no, you want to make dinosaurs, right? And then, but I understood what that, like how that worked. Cause, you know, I was a big fan of visual effects movies for a long time. So it's like, this is a way to get into making movies that I understand. I understand how, I wouldn't know how to like get a light rig up in a studio.
Here's something I can get my hands wrapped around and it's in my power to make this change. Right. So by the way, I'm thinking about the multiverse timeline where you're a paleontologist. It's really annoying.
Yeah. Well, my dad was a scientist, biologist for his most of his career. So like there was a part of that, but I didn't have the like stick-to-itiveness you need to be like a scientist. But I love science. but I was like, I really do is I love dinosaurs. So,
Right.
but there's this process going through it. So I like become an animator. An animator tends to be very focused, very
Yeah.
small, especially when you're starting out, because you're doing things like I'm going to make a lion walk or whatever,
Uh-huh.
or I'm going to have a character act, and and it starts off like I just need to make the motion good. That's how I started, especially when I was working at EA in video games. It's just about making the motion believable, right?
Yeah.
And then but to make the motion believable, you got to understand the character. Okay, so now I got to understand character and like what their choices are and what their
Right.
desires are. But to make the character choices, I need to understand the story. And then to understand the story, I got to understand big structural things. So it's like in order to like make my finger arcs better, I need to rewrite the movie. Is what
Yes.
it ended up
Yeah.
happening, which is why I kind of like I would hit these lines of like, oh, I'm animating, but now I need to supervise. Oh, now I need to direct.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
and then and then I made a feature film, and now I'm doing a TV show, right? So like there's like a evolution of that, of not like, oh, I don't like doing that, I love animating, but the reason I was animating was because I want to tell stories, I want to
Right.
engage the
Right.
audience.
And I think that's been the common thread all the way through. So, real quick, like, what are you doing now?
Well, so a few years ago I made this movie for Netflix called Next Gen,
Yeah.
and there was definitely like if we never get to make another movie, you got to put everything I ever
Yes.
loved in this. So there's robots punching each other into space and all
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
got us, so based on that, I got an agent and started taking meetings and developing other things. And so working in film and TV for
Uh
a
huh.
while since then. But, during the pandemic, things got
Weird.
a little weird. It's hard to sell. Like there was a long period where studios weren't buying anything, and we
Yep.
were pitching stuff, and none of it was going. But video games had this resurgence during the pandemic, right?
Right.
So I ended up directing cinematics for a
Okay.
number of video games. So
Oh,
for
that's
like
wild.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I came back to video games after all those years, and partially it's like I look back and I was looking at like we were saying, Bobby Coddington, what some of those guys are doing is like, oh shit, like they have like technology has gotten up to the point where you can do real animation.
Yes.
Of course, the stuff we were doing is cinematic, so it's a different. It's still more like linear narrative. But like, I
Yep.
loved going back into the video game world. Ended up working with Guerrilla Games on a couple of
Okay.
cinematics for their new IP that's coming out next year,
Yeah.
or sometime soon.
Future.
Yeah, coming
Yeah.
out in the future.
Coming out not when Grand Theft Auto comes out, because everybody's avoiding that ship date. Yeah.
Comes out.
Yeah.
And that's been, like hugely rewarding working
Yeah.
with that team. One, I'm a big fan of the Horizon games, and
Yep.
that team is just doing amazing work. But also like seeing what you can do in video game engines with
Yeah.
their
It's amazing.
the stuff that they're working on now, which I'm not allowed to talk about, but like the next iteration is amazing. It is
Yeah.
like these next level kind of stuff. So it's
Is
like,
this all
oh shit,
Unreal
like
stuff?
not Unreal. It's Decima
Okay.
is their own engine
Oh,
that
okay.
they
Okay.
build. Yeah.
Got it.
But it is, and I think that's the same engine that Kojima uses for his games now too.
Yeah.
It's all part of the Sony family. But what they're doing with it, the way they're pushing, because Horizon Zero Dawn is very photorealistic and very lush. What they're doing and pushing it on is remarkable. I think there's a little bit of stuff available online,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure what I'm allowed to talk about, but it's really amazing, and to a point where like I'm a bit jealous that like, oh, that is where video games are now.
Right.
But then the big project is also video game related. So I am at the moment, again, I can't talk about it a lot,
Sure.
but I'm
Fine.
right now developing a TV show for Netflix,
Okay.
an animated series based on Minecraft,
Oh, okay.
which is one of the biggest video games of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's fun.
Hopefully soon we'll have more to talk
Yeah.
about it. But that has been a dream job, and partially because like it's a chance for me to like play video games
Right.
and
Right.
not feel
Right.
guilty about playing
Sure.
video games
Sure.
because I should be doing something else.
You know what? The older you get, the smaller the world gets. You start running
Yeah,
into
for
people,
sure.
and you're like,
And animation is such a
yeah.
small world. Yeah.
You're like I'm working with 2 or 3 guys, and I'm like, we never crossed paths, but I know I was in the same arcade with them in the 80s. Like I'm working with a guy that worked for Sega at some point, but he's from Torrance, and I'm like, oh, I guarantee we were in the Old Town Mall arcade at the same time, and you or I were standing behind the other one, waiting for the other one to finish.
On Dragon's Lair.
Or Dragon's Lair, or like Punch Out, or like,
Yeah.
something like that. And so, but I'm working with 2 or 3 of those guys now, and I'm like, wow, this is wild, right? Like because as you're coming up in your career, you sort of hold on to this microcosm of like just the network around you, and you don't realize how much bigger it is. Yeah.
Well, and kind of that's what networking is, right? Something to tell people that are coming out of school. And networking isn't like going and hanging out with your heroes. It's hanging out with the people that you like hanging out with, who do the same things, who are interested in the same things. And then as you all go off and
and do stuff.
do
Yeah.
stuff, and then you're like, you know what, I know somebody, let me bring them
Let me bring
in.
him in. Yeah. Actually, that's how I ended up on that Game Changers documentary.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
it's like a friend of a friend who was an editor who was a friend of somebody else, and then they're like, "Oh, if you're going to talk about video games and you want to do X, you should go talk to Chris." Met that guy. Like, it's basically networking is not what you think it is when you're in your 20s. When you're in your 20s, you think it's like cold sales, right? And you're like,
hustling, or
how
whatever,
do I win networking? And that's not how it works, right? Like networking is really like, how do I find my vibe tribe, right? And like cruise around the world and collect this vibe tribe. That I can
and
then,
when the opportunity comes up, and it's
okay.
and the more you do it, the more those opportunities happen. Yeah.
And as you get older, the more you'll understand that it's networking is just about who you don't keep in touch with as much as it is who you do keep in touch with, right? And so
that's true,
there's just let your vibe lead you down that road. Don't ever feel like you're networking with somebody you don't want to. Anyway, sorry, that's a weird aside. So like my future is going to be solo game dev. That's my retirement.
Yeah, cool.
Part of my thesis for that though is that besides the fact that I've got 20 back burner games that I've been sitting on for 30 years.
I know some of those games. I'm excited about some of those games.
Yeah. Well, some of them have morphed over time, right? I keep redesigning them to be current. And then, they sort of, I'm just waiting for executional power. But like I have, with the idea that one day, like I'm starting to build my indie garden right now that I can live in eventually. Like I'm not quite there yet. I think the very first indie project that I want to do, this is also based on a thesis of like the business has an inverse scale. The bigger your project is, the less art it is. Right.
Yeah,
and that's true in entertainment, right? So personal expression is like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go do indie stuff. That means that if I can make them cheaply enough and fast enough and under my own power, I can make them really artsy because I'm not worried about, hitting like a sales quota, right? I would love to make enough to live on, but whatever. Like I can now focus on artsy stuff. I have an artsy project for you that's like maybe an hour-long experience total that I think. So I have it written up. I'll send it to you after this. It's pretty personal, but it's not technically a game. Like I'm not defining it yet. It's like it's interactive, but it's not necessarily like I'm having to break a lot of my own rules as far as like my reflexes. Right, my reflexes are AAA. Right.
Of course.
So like it's really challenging to do something like a 1 hour experience game, right? That's a little bit more narrative focused. And I'm sort of accepting the fact that like I don't have to solve some of the problems that I would normally solve first. Right. And so I'm going with it.
Flexes different parts of your brain.
Yeah.
The world has changed in terms of like how video games, like there's obviously so many things that there's a tidal wave of content.
Yes.
But also like there are things that trickle up that are unique and individual that like qualify as games, but like something like And Roger or whatever.
Yes.
Like there's these things that sort of like, what is this even? Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, but it's also like one of my other operational pillars that I'm on is like build it and they will come is no longer viable for games. Like you need to build your community along with you. And so like
100%. Yeah.
It's interesting that like there's a liberation to that, but I have to like break the shackles myself.
It's a different kind of a job, isn't it? Yeah.
It's also a different mind frame, right? Whereas like now I'm like getting used to sharing things early, being more younger in thought process of like, I'm going to put it out early and vulnerable and take all the feedback and start dealing with stuff as opposed to like, wait, it's not done yet.
To be perfect.
Yeah. It's going to be amazing when I'm done with it. Like you have to sort of just start. But it's been really fun because I'm involving people earlier and, I'm secure enough in my own experience and stuff to still sit on the like, oh, that's a great idea, but nah.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so we're about out of time. Is there anything you want to plug or talk about or?
No, just, this project I'm on now is going to be a while. These things take a long time. As I like to joke, animation is the worst way to make a movie, one frame at a time. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Of course, I love animation, but it is a lot of work. So, there'll be more information on that coming soon. The thing that I really want to stress is that like I, as a animator, I was kind of a snob early on because my experience in video games I found frustrating, and I was like, this is not what I want to do. But then I didn't give it a chance, right? Then like years later, Spider-Man and God of War and
Sure.
Last of Us, and like video games are not only a perfectly viable way to do animation, they are some of the more cutting edge of where animation is going.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just apologizing to all video games for being a snob about it. I mean, I've been a huge video game fan the entire time. I play video games as much as I can, but like as an animator, like I gave up on it early.
Sure.
And now, like, it's the first place I would encourage people to go if they want to learn, if they want to do interesting, cool animation.
Yeah.
Video games is ripe to the point where, like, it's a huge industry, and you can totally make your living as an animator in video games. Yeah.
Joe, don't be a dick. So
don't be exactly.
Don't be a dick.
You win, dick.
You win, dick. All right. So let's do this. I totally want you to come back on, and also it's a great excuse for you and I to catch up. I'm going to set the topic for our next call.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to send you my sort of documentation materials. And I think I'm just going to give you this like rough story that I, wrote out. I'll give you some background on it, but reserve all of your comments and stuff. I actually want you to come back on here. We'll record it.
Do it live?
Yeah, we'll just record like the sort of jive. So, because like my two reasons for that is, number one, I actually really want your feedback. Number two, I think there's an interesting thing in our relationship. It's going to be clear from this recording that we've known each other for a long time. But I think watching the two of us work through something is actually kind of interesting because
entertaining in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, yes, totally. And I think if you and I can abstract a little bit and be a little self-aware while we're doing that, I think we can call out some things to like, oh, did you see what Joe just did there? He did X, Y, and Z, and da-da-da-da. Like, basically, we could give our own play-by-play on a thing.
Give it a shot,
like,
for sure, yeah.
And I don't care about sharing the idea because it's 100% wholly mine, and what a great way for me to just go ahead and put it out in the world anyway. So
cool.
I'll send you the stuff. All right, Joe, thanks for coming on. Man, I miss the moments. And I miss you, but I mean, I miss those moments where we had, these discussions, and like, I definitely want you to come back on. It's been
formative and intimate in all sorts of cool ways. Right. And I think, like, I don't get to talk to Chris Cross as often as I would like, but I am so excited for you. I'm so proud of you watching this podcast come together. It is. It just makes me feel good to know that you're still doing this and you're doing it at such a high level. And with that mind, with that focus, it's huge. So congrats, man.
Thanks, dude. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
Experian is your big financial friend, helping you explore credit card offers with confidence. Some cards are labeled no ding decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit scores. See Experian.com for details. Applying for cards labeled no ding decline won't hurt your credit scores if you aren't initially approved.
You deserve better health care, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future. Because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electricast.